So I've been in education for about 3 years now, and I'm leaving kind of suddenly for the three following reasons. First of all, I think it's criminal that kids hate coming to school and teachers hate coming to work, and I'm supposed to just go along with that. Number two, the culture is plagued with low morale, complacency among both teachers and students, and pretending. That is, pretending to teach and pretending to learn because, of course, you have to put on a show to make it look like education is actually happening. But in reality, everyone in the building knows that kids are screwing around, chatting on their phones, and I'm not even blaming them. It's us. It's the teacher's fault, the adults in the building's fault, and also the adults that are leading the adults, the bureaucracy overhead and things like that. It's all a joke, is my point. And the final reason is all the best of my education has come from my own studies in my own time. So for example, I'm a self-taught bilingual. I took 4, maybe 5 years of high school Spanish, and I graduated high school, much like you might have done, not knowing a lick of Spanish. I maybe knew some like basic phrases, but basically no Spanish. Couldn't talk in Spanish. And then I went to Austin, Texas for a year and a half, not even 2 full years. And I started just researching how to learn a language online. I used a couple of different apps and I found one that I really liked. I used that. It was not Duolingo. Everyone says that. Not Duolingo. I have a video about it. I'll link it up in the screen right now if you're curious. I used that app and a combination of some other things, and I taught myself not fluent Spanish, but like a really high level of proficiency where I could have conversations just practicing right there in Austin and using those tools that I speak about in that video. And so basically, in public education, I see bitterness, I see complacency, and I see a lot of pretending. All of those from both teachers and students, whereas in self-education, what you're engaging in right now, I see freedom to study what I want to study as quickly as I want. I see the entire world of the internet to enable me to find how best to learn a particular subject, whether that be a language or history or mathematics or whatever interests you, particularly how to make money in various ways. And I see a lot of joy because I get to take it at my own pace, but also I get to choose, like I said already, I get to choose what I want to study, what actually interests me. And I can dive in to the things that I want to dive into rather than having them shoved down my throat. So that's why I'm over public education. Here's what I'm doing now instead. I'm 28 years old, almost 29, next week, I believe. And I was told, and I expected, and I've been trying to settle in my 20s on what my professional role was going to be. Maybe you can relate to this. I've been trying now for basically all of my 20s, and what I think I've settled on is this. I'm almost 30 years old now, and what is it that I want to do with my life? What do I want to be when I grow up? I don't want to specialize. I thought about being a data analyst, but I don't just want to analyze data. I thought I wanted to teach Spanish and then maybe math, but I don't just want to study Spanish or math my entire career. I want to learn lots of things. I would love to learn a third language. I want to study history. I want to learn guitar, maybe piano one day. Over the summer, I've been learning how to cook so that I can eat healthier and therefore be healthier. In other words, I want to spend my life learning, not just working. But the problem has always been, how do you make money doing that? Because the way that you make money, what I was told, right, and what you were probably told too, is you pick a profession, you get good at it, and then you work it. You get a salary, maybe some nice benefits. There's a lot that I could say about that. But here's how Robert Kiyosaki puts it in his book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Poor Dad wanted me to specialize. That was his view on how to be paid more. He never understood that the more specialized you become, the more you are trapped and dependent on that specialty. If you go on to read the rest of the book, you learn that essentially the philosophy that Kiyosaki is promoting is that instead of specializing, you instead spend your life learning various skill sets and collecting multiple streams of income. Okay, so for example, I'm almost 29 years old right now, and I find myself in the following position. I have a part-time job at Texas Roadhouse. I work part-time during the school year as a substitute teacher, short-term subbing. I recently tried a long-term subbing gig, and I'll never do that again. And I've set up a guest room in my house that I use to Airbnb. I rent it out on Airbnb. So effectively, I do have multiple streams of income. Granted, none of them I probably make what I could as, say, a salaried teacher, for example. Although altogether, it probably comes pretty close. But more important than that, I have time. Obviously, both of my part-time jobs require some amount of my time, right? And even Airbnb is going to require a little bit of maintenance, right? But two things. First of all, I choose how much time I give to my two part-time jobs. I choose my schedule. They're both very flexible. Texas Roadhouse, I can dip in and out my feet, change my availability at will for the most part. And long-term or short-term subbing, you literally decide every single day whether you're going to work or not. It's totally up to you. And then Airbnb, of course, you decide what days you have your room available or not. And that doesn't require my presence necessarily because I have my home set up to be very easy for check-in and stuff. That's the first thing, is that I control how much time I spend and how much I'm investing to earn the amounts of money that I earn in those three different respects. But the second thing is, even when I do work, it's clock in, clock out, and I'm done. I spoke a little bit more in detail on this in another video. I'll put it up on the screen right now if you're curious. But that is a huge advantage that if you're in a similar position you have over somebody that's a salaried teacher. Try working only 40 hours a week as a full-time teacher. I dare you. I dare you to try and see how it goes. There's no teacher, unless you're just willing to be complacent, which is what happens a lot of the time. A lot of teachers have just chosen to go that path, working only the contract hours, because in order to keep up with IEPs, meetings, relationships with students, relationships with teachers, expectations from admin, it's a very demanding position to be in. Whereas if you have a part-time position and you're only expected to do the job while you're at the job and you're not expected to take your work home with you, yes, you've sacrificed maybe a little bit of pay, maybe a little bit of benefits, but you've won so much time and absence of stress that I think it more than makes up for it, as long as you use that time wisely. And so I have time. I have time to think about and invest in how can I expand my current income streams and how can I possibly tack on new ones. And so with all that said, here are my actual 3 priorities that I'm focusing on this summer right now as I'm recording this. Number 1, build a personal brand. The goal is to create additional income streams by building an online audience, as well as to help others, helping them make time to learn and invest in multiple skill sets and multiple streams of income. Number 2, maximize/monetize underutilized space. The idea here is I have this whole house. I'm a single guy, so it's more room than I need myself. And I want to find ways to better utilize and monetize the extra space. Even beyond the guest room that I'm already Airbnb-ing, I have a large backyard that I could potentially install an ADU onto, which is a way to create additional living space and then rent it out for additional rental income. I have a second garage that I could potentially convert into an ADU for the same purpose. And I have an unfinished basement that could be renovated into additional living space to be rented as well, which is probably where I'm going to start because that's the most affordable. And then number 3, learn to cook well. Now this one might seem unrelated on the surface, but check this out. If you live like me, you may not have the best health insurance, right? The best health insurance tends to be employer sponsored, which is to say it tends to be with those that specialized. So if you are not in that position, you have a huge incentive to take care of yourself if you didn't already. Well, I'm not sure if you're aware, but there's a huge movement happening right now that essentially says the following: food is medicine. Depression, anxiety, diabetes, obesity, it's not a Prozac deficiency, it's diet and lifestyle. Very simple. Okay, so we'll talk about this more over time, but for now, all you need to know is this. If you learn to cook, and therefore eat well, it's an investment in your own healthcare, which will pay dividends down the road when you're not spending money on pills and surgeries and the like. And as a bonus, being able to cook for guests will also make you a much more attractive host if you're planning on Airbnb-ing like I am.